Hello, I'm Jay Bruns, the Senior Climate Policy Advisor here at the Washington State Office of the Insurance Commissioner. Welcome to the Commissioner's 2023 Climate Summit Series. Over the next few months, we'll send out a series of short videos about climate change and how the insurance industry can help address the most pressing climate problems of the day. Our host today is Insurance Commissioner Mike Kreidler, who has been active on climate and insurance since he was first elected in 2000. Commissioner Kreidler, soon after you were elected, you helped create the National Association of Insurance Commissioners Climate Change Working Group and proceeded to chair it for 20 years. Why did you take on this role?
Well, thank you, Jay, for asking that question, because it's one that is near and dear to my heart. I really believe very strongly about the impacts of climate change and the necessity for all of us to be at the forefront of making our planet a livable place for everyone. And you can't do that if you ignore one of the major financial circuits of our system, and that is insurance. You can't make the system work unless you have insurance that works, and insurance can't work if the environment is not something that we can get our hands around.
Well, thank you. And now I'm looking back, and I know that so you began in 2000. In 2009, that's less than a decade in, you were behind the NAIC decision to require insurance companies to publicly report on how climate change affects their business. Why do you think it's important for insurers to tell the public about their exposure to climate change?
I think there's probably a couple reasons for that. One, as I'd say, I think everybody who has an insurance policy wants to know what their company is doing or not doing when it comes to climate-related issues. And the second is there's going to be a vulnerability on the part of the insurance company if they're not taking appropriate steps to mitigate the impact of climate change on the products that they sell and how they sell them. They need to take that into account. And I think if they're serious, they're also looking at the problems and issues that we have with climate change itself and what we can do to turn back the clock on global warming and what it's doing to our society.
I'm thinking back also then in 2020, the NAIC elevated the importance of climate by creating this climate task force. You're a vice chair of that task force. What is impressive is that 44 of our states are members. What drives this high participation rate, do you think?
One is, I think, is just a global understanding and awareness of climate change that is really new and from the standpoint of a real mindset change. Even the politics of it has really gone through a huge metamorphosis. It's not a question any longer if there's climate change happening because of global warming. It is a recognition that, in fact, it is occurring, and how do we manage it? And I think that's something that now is much more of a bipartisan issue. It always was a bipartisan issue, but now it's even more so. Meaning everybody, Republican, Democrats, all working together to make sure that we're addressing this issue. And I think that has made a huge difference among the states, the number of states participating, and certainly the degree of participation that we're even seeing at an international level on the insurance-related issues. This is one that's really come home to roost, and it's one where we understand the problems, we see the complexity, and we need to work together to come up with workable, pragmatic solutions to this very challenging issue.
Well, Commissioner, I wanted to move to the international forum because we've been talking about the national stage and now, but internationally, you have also been very much a leader. In 2006, you were one of 6 regulators worldwide who created this entity called the Sustainable Insurance Forum. It's a global system where sustainability factors are integrated into the regulation and supervision of insurance companies. It grew from those 6 regulators, so you were one, to today 36, and it covers 92% of the global insurance market. That translates into $5 trillion in gross insurance premiums. To what do you attribute this impressive growth of the Sustainable Insurance Forum?
Again, Jay, I really go back and I focus on what's happened to the world population and their view of climate change. It's not something that can be ignored any longer. It's come back. It bites us practically every night we turn the news on. We're aware of climate-related issues, not infrequently ones that can be attributed, at least in part, to the climate change. And it's happening on a much more magnified level, meaning we're seeing it much more comprehensively and endemically in our society, global society. And I think that's really made a difference. I think there's a recognition here that from the standpoint of insurance companies, whether they're from the developing world or the developed world, it doesn't matter. We're all in the same boat together. It's called Planet Earth. And I think there's a recognition now that we're going to stick together and solve this problem, much more so. And I think I've had the pleasure of being there at the time when we made that transition from just a few government entities to now being the majority of the generating premium volume for insurance in the world, all being part of a international organization.
I should note that the next Sustainable Insurance Forum meeting is here in Washington in Seattle this summer. Commissioner, looking forward, what is your vision of the insurance industry, of how an insurance industry that it will contribute substantially to climate change, and how it will help put us on a path to net zero?
What they can do is certainly really evaluate what they're doing as a company relative to the products that they're offering and the kind of insurance that they're making available. It is really having the long-term view, not the short-term view. It is not one of just looking and saying, what can we do for the next year or two? This is one where you have to take the long view if you're going to be successful in applying what needs to happen here on the part of the global community, and certainly on the part of insurance companies. They need to be able to make it very clear to their policyholders there are certain expectations that we have. We're going to work with you to make sure that happens. And if you want us to be your insurer, these are the standards that we're going to require. We want that to be reasonable and pragmatic, take a global view, so you're not punishing those in areas where there's tougher regulations and holding them to a higher standard. We want to make sure that the whole world has this apply, and that we're doing everything ultimately that we can do to make sure that we're protecting this planet of ours.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, over the past 6 years, the Commissioner's Annual Climate Summit has featured insights from climate scientists who have been deeply involved in our U.S. National Climate Assessment, from researchers who track public attitudes toward climate change, from insurance company executives who have explained to us why addressing climate change is so important for them, from tribal leaders who tell us how climate change is affecting their communities, and from national defense officials who tell us how climate change affects U.S. combat readiness, and from United States representatives as well as Washington state legislators on what they are doing to address climate change. And this year's programming will build on those learnings from previous years. And I hope that our audience will find it valuable. Thank you, and please let us know what you think.